This is Dandy Drew. He just became the US Catan champion and he'll be facing the best players in the world for the Catan World Championship in March. In this video, we'll dive into his journey to infiltrating the ranks of the best players in the world and of course, how he beat everyone at the US National. If you've ever tried to learn Colonist strategy, you've probably stumbled upon Dandy Drew. Over the past couple years, Dandy has grown into a sort of Colonist celebrity. Known for his consistent high-level performance, Dandy Drew has become the source to learn about strategy and watch some great gameplay. And this might make you think, well, he's probably been playing Catan forever, but nothing could be further from the truth. Chapter 1, The Rise. It wasn't actually until 2016 when Dandy Drew encountered a Catan board for the very first time. During a party where some board games were being played, the best kind of party, and perhaps in not the most sober condition, Dandy played his very first game. And to start a legendary record, Dandy was crushed by his friends during his debut. Perhaps not particularly motivated, our protagonist would not play another game of Catan until the following decade, which is just 4 years later, but it sounds more dramatic. It was around 2021 when Dandy Drew, playing a game of the Catan Game of Thrones version, actually fell in love with the game. Blame the Game of Thrones aesthetic, the desire to beat those particular friends, or the fact that Dandy found himself in a slightly more sober condition, but something clicked for him during that game. From then on, Dandy Drew would embark on a journey to become the figure that we all know and love today. His first steps were probably similar to anyone watching this video. Inspired to dominate his Catan playing friends, he went on YouTube and searched for some Catan strategy. This led him to stumble upon Delighted, a figure that would come back during his story. Being a chess fanatic and having gained some new strategic insights, Dandy Drew was inspired to obtain the Catan Grandmaster title online. After obtaining it in a matter of weeks, this early accomplishment planted a seed in his mind that continued to germinate over the coming years. With the realization that he could actually play competitively, Dandy Drew's eyes were set on the next challenge, the Discord communities and their weekend tournaments. And unlike the underwhelming experience that we mere mortals have during our first tournaments, Dandy Drew won his very first tournament. This, of course, contributed to his motivation and momentum, and he went on to sign up for basically all the competitive Catan he could find. Dandy Drew actually went on to set the record of tournament wins for Catan community, winning 9 tournaments in under a year and a half, and he entered the scene of the leagues, a longer form of competitive Catan. Leagues go by monthly seasons, and after 14 seasons, Dandy was able to claim the D1 championship, completing yet another milestone. Once again, Dandy Drew collected an accomplishment which made him think, I can actually win tournaments. During this early momentum, Dandy ventured into one of the most iconic experiences in the space, traveling to play a real-life official Catan tournament. For a change though, Dandy Drew did not leave this tournament victorious. In fact, it took him 3 more qualifiers to make it to his first US National. However, funny enough, Dandy Drew and Delighted actually met each other in person for the first time during that tournament, and they both reached the final. And it was actually Delighted who defeated Drew in the final to steal the victory. Although I won't tell you how that game went just yet. This is the very picture taken then and there after the fact. Yes, let that sink in, Dandy Drew was a Delighted fanboy at one point. This, however, more than a trivial encounter, was a foreshadowing of the collaboration that would bring the community one of its most iconic characters. Chapter 2, YouTube. In March 2023, a collaboration took place that would have a profound impact on the Catan scene. Remember, Dandy Drew started his journey in the Catan strategy world watching Delighted, and only a couple years later, in a full circle moment, Delighted recruited Drew, who was then the #1 ranked player on Colonist, to coach him through some games. The collaboration spanned 3 extremely well-received videos, which amassed over 250,000 views. The amount of reception and support that the saga received inspired Dandy Drew to start his own channel, and the rest is kind of history. Dandy Drew became the fastest growing channel in the space, gaining 11,000 subscribers within 1 year. In under 2 years, Drew's channel has grown to be the 2nd biggest channel posting Colonist, and he has built an extremely rich community. He posts extremely consistently, showcasing gameplay and strategy at the highest level, as well as the odd lesson here and there. In fact, our protagonist is quite fond of teaching strategy, so much so that he started the Settlers Intensive, the most comprehensive Catan coaching program ever. With an A-team that features some of the strongest players in the world, TSI is designed to take someone's game to the next level. players leaving the program become incredibly strong on Colonist. And now, Dandy Drew has put all of his knowledge into a new course for all levels, which you can learn more about in the description. And after breaking all the records imaginable and taking players to the highest level, Dandy Drew was ready to face one of the most iconic beasts of all, the US Catan National Championship. Chapter 3, US Nationals. Even for one of the best players alive, winning consistently is extremely challenging. As mentioned, it took Dandy Drew 3 qualifiers to make it to his first US Nationals, where he did not excel the way he's used to. But of course, it did not stop there. It's June 2024 and Dandy Drew is determined to make it to this year's Nationals. So he ventures into his regional tournament in Florida. Rising victorious against over 25 serious players was not going to be a walk in the park. At least it wasn't supposed to. But Dandy slayed through the tournament, winning every single game and ending 4-0, of course, qualifying for the US Nationals. Again, this is a 4-player game where the average win rate should be 25%. This is not normal. Something was different this year. Drew's demeanor and sort of unattached determination seemed to bring out his best game. In fact, during the wake of the US Nationals, Dandy released a video to his audience where he announced his departure to St. Paul to play this very tournament. And I must confess that watching it, I thought to myself, he has it. But as Dandy Drew admitted himself in the video, no matter how skilled or determined you are, things have to go your way to walk away with a trophy at a tournament of this caliber. The first day of the US Nationals, there are 125 players and every single person plays 4 qualifying games. Assuming you make it through, the following day you play the semifinals and the finals. Dandy finished his first game with 7 points. This was a brutal start because in a qualifying stage like this, not only do you have to win games, but you have to score points. This is because points are used to differentiate between players who have won the same number of games. So starting with 7 points meant he only had 2 scenarios to reach 2 wins and 36 points, which is usually enough to make it through. Drew either had to win his 3 remaining games or win 2 and get 9 points in one of them. But luckily, Drew did just that. He won his next 2 games and managed to leave the last game with 9 points, making it through to the semifinal. Let's talk about the semifinal. Remember, back in his first real-life tournament, Drew lost the final to Delighted. What we didn't mention is the fact that in that game, he pulled 7 nights in a row, where a single victory point and probably anything else would have given him the win. However, years later, the Catan gods decided to balance out Mr. Dandy Drew's luck, because Dandy pulled all 5 victory points in the US Nationals semifinal. Yes, 5 victory points out of the 6 development cards that he drew during that game. So, after pulling a behemoth hand, he made it to the final round, the US Nationals. In the tournament, you go around the table deciding what turn you want to be in to pick your settlements. And this order is decided by how many points you accumulated. Drew was forced to choose his position, but ironically was left with first position. Although he had what many would take as an obvious choice, Dandy decided to bet hard on the wheat, which was going to be relatively rare that game. And ultimately, he started with 12 points of production on wheat, a wheat port, no ore, and no brick. Dandy decided to focus on a setup which would require him to cooperate with other people. And he trusted that his communication skills would help him. And that's exactly what happened. Without producing a single ore, Drew was able to build an early city on his best settlement, making him produce even more wheat so he could make use of that wheat port. Drew managed to get some early momentum, but there was a big turning point for the game. With 12 cards, Dandy rolled a brutal 7 and was forced to discard. Now, one of the most interesting moments of the tournament took place right here. If you've played Colonist, you know that when a 7 rolls, people offer NB or no block for a certain resource. Now, in official Catan tournaments, this sort of extortion is not allowed, because you can't discuss any resources before placing the robber. However, a silent extortion deal took place instead. Instead of offering a resource, someone said, "I know what you're looking for." And again, without naming a resource, Dandy asked, "Are you saying what I think you're saying?" By the nodding of his head, Dandy knew he had the ore he needed, and he carried out his silent extortion deal. And although the discard was brutal, he managed to get a settlement and a victory point that turn, minimizing damages. Ultimately, Dandy managed to exploit his setup to build 2 more cities, and again with a slight smile from the Catan gods, pulled a 3rd victory point to bring the tournament home. Dandy Drew's journey is filled with success, yes, but behind the scenes, there's a few things going on. On one hand, there are thousands and thousands of games that Dandy Drew has been a part of, and these give him an insight into the game that most can only dream of. And on the other, there are countless of unlucky games that he had to play in order to finally have fortune on his side when it mattered the most. But the journey is not over. The national winners from every country will soon gather in Germany, the birthplace of Catan. In April 2025, the best players from all over the world will meet in Stuttgart, and only one will rise victorious. So good luck, Dandy Drew. We'll see you in Germany.